Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo to Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans. The cap's raising, dudes, and it's a lot more than we thought it was going to be. $255.5 million is your new cap number for the 2024 season, which is up, like $30 million bucks, the most I've ever seen in one season for the NFL cap to grow, and it's coming in a year that the Chargers fans needed it, the Bolt fam needed it, the team needed it. We were so far over the cap, probably the worst I've seen in a long time now. Finally, we're starting to see a lot of that relief come in. Corey Linsley reworked his contract. We got the new league total being risen like crazy. Now we went from minus $45 million to just $22 million over the cap. There's some moves that we still need to make to clear some money. In the end, though, man, this good news got me thinking about free agency again. I know some people are like, director, we don't have money. We're going to be bystanders. We're going to be, spectators in this year's free agent class. I disagree, man. We got new leaders all over the team. We got a new Jim Harbaugh-led unit. We got Jesse Minter. We got Greg Roman. We're going to need fellas that fit that vision for this brand new 2024 Jim Harbaugh-led Chargers going into the future. And I do think the Chargers are going to be players in this year's free agency. So we're going to go through some of the best free agents fits for the Chargers. We're going to do something a little experimental in today's video and have some fun with who we think the Chargers could be bringing in free agency in 2024. Now, before we do jump into it, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. The NFL season has just concluded, but those of you guys who want to keep the party going, use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. Get in on the action. You newcomers enjoy this special coming up for this weekend. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub. If you do enjoy this Chargers content, small amount of time you guys take to the like, sub, and bell notification. Helps me out a lot. Let's talk some free agents, baby. Lights, camera, action. Breaking news, the NFL makes history with the largest increase in its cap ever, and it coming in a season the Chargers desperately needed it. Now, of course, a lot of you guys will be saying, but before we even start touching any of the free agent ideas and signings here, Director, what kind of money are we going to be working with? It could be a lot, man. It could be a lot. Just off the top of my head, okay? And we just talked about this even a few days ago. Things that could happen. I think a number of these will happen. It's going to equate to some money left in the bank. Here are some moves that the Chargers could be making. I think Khalil Mack could end up getting traded, I should say, actually, which would free up even putting that one move. That one move all of a sudden puts us in the green, by the way, when it comes to the cap for this season. Joey Bosa could be a post-June 1st cut or trade. I do think he would be traded. Keenan Allen, I do think, could be extended. Let's go ahead and do this one really, really quick, too, because this would actually give us a nice little pocket of change here. I think that he could end up being a guy that has around, in and around a $20 million contract each season. We're going to go ahead and just round it out to around that number here to give us a nice look at what the savings could be this season. I think Mike Williams is certainly going to get cut. I think Eric Kendricks could end up getting cut. Corey Linsley's going to save a couple more $1 million there with the cut. And I think, again, these are just a few of the moves that I think the Chargers could and should be making this offseason, which would equate to, if all these moves are made, a ridiculous $60 million in cap space to spend. And honestly, maybe not too far away of a number for a lot of us to be expecting in a season where, again, you're bringing in a completely new, fresh leadership across the entire front office. You may see something this dramatic. Everything that we've seen so far in the offseason has been dramatic. Jim Harbaugh has been a dramatic move. The offensive, defensive coordinators, dramatic moves. The complete turnover of all the leadership and all of the important, roles of interest in the front office has been completely turned over. That's been a dramatic move. Maybe this isn't too far away from our reality. All right, guys. So that being said, the Chargers will have money. We don't know how much it is. 61 does feel a bit high to me. But in the end, I think it's realistic to say at least half of that number, around $30 million, could be what the Chargers are working with in 2024 specifically, okay? With that in mind, we're going to do something a little experimental in today's video, okay? Something that we don't normally do. We're going to go off the cuff and sort of go over these free agents live together without any editing, if that kind of makes sense, all right? And it's going to give us a good idea of what my first take opinions are going to be on some of these guys to the Chargers, as well as finally getting some numbers associated to the names. Now, PFF, take them with a grain of salt, okay? I would say a lot of the times they overshoot what we're going to see in terms of contracts. With the cap increasing, we can absolutely start to assume that, you know, player compensation will be increased as well. But it also depends a lot on position value, et cetera, et cetera. But we're going to go ahead and assume a lot of these numbers are close to what these players are going to be asking and receiving in terms of free agency, okay? So with that, let's kind of jump into things. We understand that we're going to have money. There's going to be turnover. There's going to be signings. And there's going to be an assembly of talent to fit the visions of Harbaugh, Minter, and Roman. All right? So let's jump into things. First off, quarterbacks. Don't really need a quarterback this season, obviously. We got Justin Herbert, one of the young, up-and-coming, talents in the NFL. Of course, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Of course, if we're talking about a quarterback at all, it's going to be in terms of, like, a backup, and I don't think any of them. Maybe Tyler Huntley a little bit intrigues me, but it's going to be somebody very cheap, maybe even more than likely a very late round pick in the draft for the Chargers to maybe develop as the backup guy of the future, okay? So quarterback, that doesn't really interest me at this point. I don't think any Chargers fan is sweating that right now. Next up, wide receiver. Now this is where things kind of start to get interesting with me. The Chargers have an interesting situation at wide receiver going on right now. Of course, we don't know what's going on with Keenan yet. I'm going to assume he gets extended. At very minimum, he's staying with the team, in my opinion. But I do think Mike Williams is on his way out. Josh Palmer, we'll have to wait and see if he fits the regime of what the new guys want. He's on his last season, I think, in terms of his deal as well. And then we got guys like the TCU players, Quentin Johnston and Darius Davis, that I guess the story is still being written for those guys. That leaves the Chargers in a situation of maybe they do need to pick up a wide receiver or two, even if it's just in terms of depth in free agency. Now, in my opinion, this year's draft is pretty full of good talent everywhere, especially when it comes to speed, man. Worthy, the guy out of Texas, check him out. He could be a second, third round pick. I was saying a second round pick, even for the Chargers. We could find ourselves some speed in the draft this season. I think that guy could end up being a sub 4.3 in the NFL Combine here in the next week. There's a lot to get excited about for this position in the draft. If I were to choose a guy from this list to join the Chargers, however, it would probably end up being Marquise Brown, who does come from the Baltimore system, originally drafted by the Ravens, and does bring that speed element. Of course, now you got to kind of start thinking about the price here. 1 year, $12 million. Actually not too bad. A move I would be excited to see the team make, but I do think there's more pressing positions that the Chargers could tackle in free agency where they can still find nice talent in the draft at wide receiver. You could convince me of a guy maybe lower on this list. Tyler Boyd's not too bad. Maybe money savers like, if they want that big body guy still, DJ Chark's not a bad option. Josh Reynolds would be pretty nice. Osborne's not too bad. So maybe some of these guys a little lower on the list that possess a little bit of speed. Certainly not a bad option there. But for me at this point, I'm thinking if you want to add some more receivers, I think the draft is certainly not a bad idea. All right. Now, we're going to get into a position that maybe some of you guys will start disagreeing with the old director once again. It's going to be running back. Okay. I think there's two positions that if the Chargers have money and we're looking to go out there and spend a little bit to build this new vision of the Chargers, there's two positions I think that clearly to me would take priority. For one, I think it's running back, which we're going to go over now. And the other one, as a preview to later in the video, I think is defensive line. I think that defensive line is going to see some attention. Okay. That being said, the Chargers could make their most shocking move in free agency at running back. And there's a couple of different ways that this can go down, okay? For one, Saquon Barkley, we've talked about this, okay? Barkley has already been linked to the Chargers as a Harbaugh guy that he wants to go after. It already looks like Saquon and the Giants are going to be parting ways. Now it just kind of comes down to, what do the Chargers and its coaches and front office and everybody feel about Saquon Barkley and his longevity? All right. If they feel like he's a guy that can come in and be the number one running back of the Chargers, a top 5 back in the league, then maybe the price that he's asking for is worth it. Now, again, like I said at the top of the video, take these with a grain of salt. I think $12.5 million is way, way too high, even for a guy like Saquon Barkley. I think more realistically, he's going to be closer to $7 or $8 million per season. And if that's the case, I think it's definitely something that I would consider. At 12.5, it's a bit, or 12.25, it's a bit too rich for my blood. But who knows, man? Even me, who's thinking that something big could happen at running back, it could still be Saquon Barkley at that price point. Okay, so keep that in mind. And Saquon, dude, when you're talking about a Greg Roman-led offense, a Justin Herbert, getting help in this offense. I think Greg Roman actually had a quote in the past couple of days talking about, can you imagine what a Justin Herbert with a good run game would look like? Saquon's probably the best option in both free agency and the draft to help accomplish this, okay? He's a complete back. He can catch, he can run. It's just everything that you're looking for in transforming a run game overnight. And one big thing that Saquon brings that I need to highlight, a lot of people would say, I want to get, a 5th or 6th round running back because of Isaiah Pacheco's huge success with the Chiefs, yada, yada. That's kind of a rare situation. And on top of that, what Saquon would offer you is relief in subpar offensive line play. And of course, offensive line is going to be something that the Chargers are going to try and build up over time in a Jim Harbaugh system. Of course, you're going to see a lot of improvement there. But in the meantime, Saquon helps hide a lot of the weaknesses that the Chargers would be having in terms of transitioning maybe from a zone to more of a power scheme, and maybe filling in some positions like right tackle and center. There may be a bit of a growing, pains in that moment. And Saquon is the kind of talent that can help mask that. Okay. And he'd be going into a much better situation, let's be honest, than where he was in that system with the New York Giants. I don't know. Saquon seems like a home run to me. The money does scare a lot of people because mainly of his injury status or his injury history, but he's just such a hugely talented player that I feel even a guy like Jim Harbaugh would be willing to go in and say, you know what, if we're going to make a splash, let's make a splash. And our guy Saquon Barkley. Now, another guy that's been getting a lot of attention to the Chargers lately has been Josh Jacobs, who has emerged as the betting favorite to land with the Chargers, who is projected just under Saquon Barkley at $11.5 million. I will say that Jacobs feels like he fits the Harbaugh system a little bit better when it comes to put your head down, be that bruiser, and provide that consistency on the ground. And honestly, it's one that I wouldn't hate. A lot of people feel that, he had that one and done season, back in 2022. They forget that he was pretty solid in years prior, grading out pretty nice. Yeah, last season, maybe a little bit of a dip, but it should help, in terms of bringing his price down a little bit. And he's also only 26 years old. So if you're looking for a 3-year deal, you're going to be getting him in his prime. Whereas, Saquon Barkley, is a little bit older, but does maybe have a bit more of injury concerns behind that name. So you're kind of weighing the pros and cons here. You see Josh Jacobs for only $1 million cheaper, and you think to yourself, give me Saquon Barkley. It's definitely worth the upgrade. But on the other hand, Josh Jacobs may have a little bit more longevity. He may be a little bit less of a injury risk, and who knows? Maybe playing, the Raiders twice a year will give us a couple of 200-yard games here and there. I don't know, man. Kind of crazy to think what the top running backs of this season or of this NFL free agency period looks like, because there's some good ones, and that's why I feel like there's a good shot that Jim Harbaugh could go for one of the big dogs. And of course, you cannot talk about free agency and the Chargers and halfbacks without talking about Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry. It feels like you got Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry. All of them kind of do a little bit of a different thing. And like I said, Josh Jacobs kind of feels like the best Harbaugh guy. Derrick Henry feels like maybe the best Roman guy, the best Greg Roman guy, right? Where he is the epitome of ground and pound. He is the epitome of power back. Like, this dude is legendary in the league for a reason. And there's a lot to like in terms of what he would offer the Chargers on the short term. And that's why he's kind of emerging as my favorite in terms of free agent running backs to come join the team. Now, he is older, 29. He will be in around 30 years old when the season starts. He is going to be pricier for a player of that age, and he does have some injury concerns. However, I do think that in terms of price tag, it is not going to be $10 million. I think it's going to be sub $8 million. But also the commitment to me feels right. 2 seasons, 3 years. It kind of feels good with all these guys because what I want from one of these free agent running backs is time to go find the guy of the future. It could happen this year. There's some guys that I do like in the NFL draft. Not my favorite class that I've seen, but there are dudes that if you prioritize running back in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round, you may find your guy of the future this season. More than likely, though, I think there's some great running backs coming in the following seasons when it comes to the draft. And dudes like Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, they can buy you time to find that dude, as well as groom the guy coming up from the NFL draft. It's a position that you do feel like you want to throw into the fire more often than not, but it's also not a bad idea to give them one of the best mentors possible in one of these veteran dudes that can carry the torch while also prepping to pass it to the young guy in the future. So Derrick Henry to me feels like a great pivot towards a power run kind of system, power run kind of offense. That's a short-term commitment, should be the cheapest of the 3 options. I'm going to say by a long shot due to his age. And it's going to be, a great option for the Chargers if they want to fully commit to that new identity while also looking for the young guy of the future. Now, if they decide to go an even cheaper route, a guy that maybe doesn't cost quite as much, that could be, the guy for a couple of seasons. A couple of dudes that do stand out to me. DeAndre Swift is pretty nice. J.K. Dobbins, I'm going to say any of the Baltimore Ravens backs is certainly not a bad idea. J.K. Dobbins could be great. I'm concerned about the injury most of all with him, however. But it's maybe at $2 million, not a bad idea to take a shot on him. A.J. Dillon, $4 million. Of course, he is a lot younger. Maybe not a bad idea to take a shot on him either. Imagine what kind of damage he could do even in a Baltimore Ravens team last season, right? And then other guys that aren't listed here, like Gus Edwards, I think would be a great fit for the Chargers as well if you want an even cheaper option. But if you're looking at the sub $5 million backs for this season, I think A.J. Dillon, J.K. Dobbins, I think Swift will end up being a little bit cheaper than that. Those are definitely names to keep an eye on, okay? So there it is, running back. Again, probably the one I'm going to get the most pushback on, but either way, I think it's a huge, huge deal that the Chargers do figure this out. Now, we don't have any fullbacks listed here for the top, free agents on PFF, but the one guy I want you guys to keep an eye out for is Ben Mason. Ben Mason, fullback, tight end hybrid for the Ravens last season. I think he will be a free agent this year too. Tight end. Now, running back, and this is crazy because there's a lot of things that need to change in order to get a Jim Harbaugh version of the Chargers, right? Offensive line needs improvement. You need that running back of the future, and even the future, that running back that fits what the team and Jim Harbaugh want, Greg Roman want. We want that huge, almost face of the franchise level of running back. But you're also going to need some tight ends, man. Tight end is a hugely important position when it comes to this particular offense and Jim Harbaugh. 2, sometimes 3 tight ends, what you're going to see a lot with this team. And they're all going to carry a trait that I think a lot of us feel is a bit predictable. They need to be able to block. All right. And there's a lot of guys on here that I do think can sort of fit that. Is Dalton Schultz one of those guys? Kinda, maybe, if we have to click on here to kind of see. I think he's more of just a pure receiving kind of guy. They don't really show the run blocking and grades on here anymore, do they? Either way, guys that kind of do stick out to me. And again, it's going to be a position I feel can be fulfilled in the draft. There's a couple of really nice run blocking tight ends, including a Chargers number 5 overall pick guy in Brock Bowers. A lot of people want, myself included. He would be, the cream of the crop. But there are guys in free agency I think the Chargers need to look at because you're not going to be able to fill everything here. I think the Chargers are going to want more hybrid and blocking tight ends to fill the roster for the most part. And you're going to need at least one guy, I think, from free agency to help get that started. And a lot of these guys at the top here, maybe not bad options. I think Hunter Henry is probably the best option if you want a hybrid, pass catcher / run blocker at $6 million. Maybe not a bad idea even at this point to see a reunion of him and the Chargers. But if I were the team, I'd be looking a little bit further down the list. Guys like, I think Hooper was okay, Gesicki was okay in run blocking, but there's other guys, Max something. I think he was definitely a very nice run blocking tight end. Guys that you're not even going to find on PFF that are probably going to carry contracts in and around $2 million to be that tight end 2, tight end 3 with decent blocking, okay? I think it's something very important that the Chargers are going to be targeting very aggressively this offseason. And we'll see more guys emerge as we get closer to free agency, as teams are making cuts and moves. There's even a move at running back that we didn't mention that I think is definitely possible. There are guys that could be traded for or cut. There's a big guy that, dude, it's honestly just a gut feeling move at this point. The Chargers could easily go after like a Nick Chubb. Imagine that. Now, Nick Chubb injured early at the top of last season. Definitely a risk there, but is that a Harbaugh guy or what? I may even end up doing a whole video kind of just dedicated to him right there. All right. Next up, offensive line. There are a couple of positions here that do need some attention. I think center is probably the biggest one. You could go out there and sign I like Connor Williams a lot, Andre James a lot. These guys at around $7 million a season, I think in this particular instance are kind of worth it. Because of how important center has proven to be to Justin Herbert in particular. There was a couple of guys I remember that stood out to me even more. Biazdaz, I can't forget how to pronounce the name here. Definitely not a bad option. There was another one that was listed that I think would fit the Chargers very well as well here. But anyway, any of these centers pretty much kind of grab my attention. In terms of guards and tackles, I think there was one Ravens guard that had Kevin Zeitler, maybe not a bad option there, but the Chargers don't look terrible at guard. It's right tackle that I think might need a little bit of attention. Michael Onwenu, this would be an awesome ad for the Chargers. A bit pricey, but could end up being one of those Harbaugh guys that we break the bank for, right? We have Trey Pipkins in there for another season. He could shift to swing tackle while the Chargers get their starter in Onwenu, who I think actually played for Harbaugh at Michigan, which would definitely help the Chargers' case for adding him to the team. So keep that in mind. Offensive line is going to see some moves. I think either way, you got to upgrade the swing tackle. I think the Chargers' swing tackle has been in a rough shape for the past couple of seasons. All right. Next up, let's go to cornerback here. Corner is going to be an interesting season to monitor, man. There are some okay guys and some very good guys at the top. Jalen Johnson's great. Are they saying he's been franchise tagged? I don't know. But he's definitely going to be one of the hotter commodities out there after having a hugely successful 2023 season. L'Jarius Sneed is also another name I want you guys to keep your eye on because he does fit a lot of what we're looking for in terms of matching speed. The Chargers have been burned a lot the last couple of seasons, and it's going to be very difficult finding cornerbacks that can match some of the league's best, step for step in terms of speed. Sneed is one of those guys. Sneed brings the need for speed, and that's something that I think, and he's very good in coverage as well. That's something that I think the Chargers could certainly be looking at if he does become available. But more often, the Chargers are going to be looking maybe a bit further down the list for guys that can play more in the slot, okay? Because the Chargers do have a kind of a glaring need there. A couple guys to kind of mention here. Christian Fulton's really projected a 1-3. Oh, man. Jordan Lewis could definitely be a guy. Again, these contracts in and around $3 million. I actually expect these to be a little bit higher, but Jordan Lewis, definitely not bad. Ronald Darby, a little bit older, but, the Chargers could use just kind of a guy to step in for a season. Sean Murphy, Bunting, Adoree Jackson. There are certainly guys in here that the Chargers should be prioritizing in terms of position. Corner is actually a big, big need of this team, especially in the slot. And you're going to see a lot of movement on defense when it comes to the DBs. Because I do think that, again, we're not going to see Michael Davis back. Hopefully Alohi Gilman makes his return. But outside of, Asante Samuel, what do we really have at corner? We're going to need to find something. And I think the draft could be a great source for that. I'd be very shocked if the Chargers don't take a corner in the top 3 or 4 picks. But you could certainly convince me that they're going to look at free agency as a viable option for that. What about safety? Now, the Chargers, again, very good at safety. They have an interesting situation with Derwin James because of how much they need to move him around. You could convince me that they go out there and get a more than capable, strong safety to step in for Derwin James while he's moving around the field. But I think the biggest narrative here is what do the Chargers do at free safety? Of course, Alohi Gilman's probably my number one option right now. But there's other guys that you could definitely consider. Kyle Duggar is definitely not a bad option there. $17 million, though. You have to start weighing the options here. Curl's not bad. Geno Stone is a great option coming from the Baltimore system. $6.5 million could certainly convince me there. But even guys further down the list I do like. Is CJ Gardner-Johnson really on the 1.5 already? Deshaun Elliott is also a really great option there at free safety. Alohi Gilman projected for a 1. If this is really the case, I think this is ridiculous. I think this is way too low. But if that's the case, Alohi for 1 season on 2.67, that's one of the easiest decisions you could make in the offseason right there. So Alohi Gilman, my number 1 option right now. And maybe like a backup. Jeremy Chinn's really on a 1.3. There's no way. Right? Jaron Kearse, 1 and 3 points. So Kearse would be a great Derwin James relief player, even at 30 years old. That's kind of what you're going to be asking him to do. But Jeremy Chinn? What happened? Spent a lot of time in the nickel spot. Yeah, please. Thank you. Give me Jeremy freaking Chinn for 1 year on $3 million. Abso-friggin-lutely. He just shot up the mileage. I had no idea he was available for that cheap. Absolutely insane. Mike Edwards, not a bad idea either. There's some great safeties actually lower on this list that the Chargers should be attacking. Whether it be, I think, again, very easy decision for me is Alohi Gilman, especially that price point. But give me a guy in that Derwin relief role for a pretty cheap deal on 1 season, too. I think Jeremy Chinn, can you imagine Jeremy Chinn and Derwin James swapping roles in the slot? I don't know, man. It looks like he's had a couple of rough seasons, but the potential in a new team is pretty high. I like some of these guys towards the bottom of the list a lot towards for the Chargers at safety. And then finally, last couple positions here on the line, very, very important. Well, actually, let's start with the linebackers. Chargers are going to need to get a linebacker or 2 this season. Let me be very clear on that. We're going to need to find a dude to step in for Eric Kendricks if we do cut him, or a guy to lead this Harbaugh, say Jesse Minter defense, okay? The Minter defense, I think, demands a lot from at least one particularly good linebacker. And there's guys that can accomplish that. If you're looking for a 1-year thing, Lavonte David, even at 34 years old. Is Bobby Wagner on here too? If you're looking, Bobby Wagner at 33 years old, man. If you're looking for a 1-year solution while we're kind of building the squad, these veteran guys would be a great option. Some of you guys might say, well, Eric Kendricks was supposed to be that. Yes and no. Kendricks is good, but even in the last couple of seasons, Lavonte David and Bobby Wagner have been on another level. You take a look at some of their PFF grades there. I would say that's not a bad option to take. Now, if you want something a little bit cheaper, Patrick Queen with that projection is probably off my radar all of a sudden. I was hoping he would be closer to 10. 18 is just way too high. Jordan Brooks seems a little high to me as well. Devin White, I would be a big fan of that. Certainly a fast dude over the middle. There's another guy, Drew Tranquil. Probably, I don't know if I want him back after the stuff he said about LA. There was one other guy in particular I was excited to think about. Maybe Willie Gay. It was the other Devin Bush from the Seattle Seahawks. He comes from the Michigan program there too. Very speedy. Could see a nice resurgence back with Jesse Minter and Jim Harbaugh. So I don't know, man. Some solid options at linebacker, but I kind of like the veteran options, at the very top of the list to kind of buy you time to go find a guy in the draft, groom the next guy. Maybe Dan Henley, gets that veteran leadership from Lavonte David or Bobby Wagner this season. I love the Wagner projection, 1 and 4. Like, that's great. And I think he's got a couple more years left in the tank. I'd be pretty high on Bobby Wagner joining the squad for 1 or 2 seasons there. And then finally, again, getting to the trenches here on the defensive side of the ball. Interior defenders. Now, some of you guys, again, you're going to hate me so much for some of the opinions I had on running back. You guys might hate me even more for the opinions I have on the interior of the defensive line. This year's class of interior defenders in the draft, they don't especially pop off the page for me. I think there's maybe 2 guys in the first round that kind of sort of catch my interest. Outside of that, you could find some value. But I think some of the best players you're going to find at all are going to come via free agency. And honestly, I kind of want the Chargers to be players on Chris Jones. I don't know if he may have been rumored to already being re-signed. I think I may have read something on that. But if he truly is available, even at the price point of $30 million a season, I think that could be worth it. It kind of fits what I want to see in a Jim Harbaugh / Jesse Minter style defense. It's a huge position for that defense. And Chris Jones is exactly the kind of talent, that freak athlete, that freak, playmaking over the middle kind of player that could really take that defense over the top. So if Chris Jones in any way, shape, or form becomes available, even at $30 million a season, man, at 29, 30 years old, I'm still in. I really, really am. I think he could be that big of an impact for whatever team decides to pick him up. I would like that to be the Chargers, quite honestly. That's a lot of money. But you got to remember, this isn't a situation where, what if we do trade Joey Bosa and we do have that extra huge amount of money? Like if we're in the $60 million range because of a big trade like Bosa, would you be willing to go from Bosa to Chris Jones? I think I kind of would, right? If that's the kind of defense that you're trying to build. Now, what if we try to go a little bit cheaper here and choose Madubuike, dude? Like this would be a huge signing right here too. Projected for $7 million less. He's 4 years younger. This, again, I feel like you have so much more proven ground with Chris Jones that even at 30 years old, I know I'm getting a dog in the middle of that line. I know that we're going to see some huge improvement over the middle. Madubuike, I think that, especially because he comes from the Ravens system, I feel pretty confident that he would be that difference maker. But also, he's been improving, but it's less hugely impactful like Chris Jones' name has been carrying, if that makes sense. Either way, between the two, of course, I think I want Chris Jones more. But Madubuike, I think this would be one of those situations where he's going from a Ravens defense to a Chargers defense that's the Ravens of the West, right? We're going to be a Ravens-style defense. It could be beneficial for him as well as a lesser risk for the Chargers because he's coming into a very similar situation. That's why I really think that, again, either one of these guys would excite the crap out of me. I would prefer Chris Jones, but give me Madubuike. If you're a Chargers team that wants to get a little bit younger, $23 million is certainly a big discount per season in terms of money. And then the longevity there at 26 years old, 4-year deal, I would not blink at that. Madubuike, man, is the kind of guy that I think, if you're talking about biggest signings at free agency for the Chargers, he may be at the top of my list, right? Running back is still up there. Chris Jones is still up there, like in between my two preferences. But I think Madubuike, like, just the situation feels really good. The price feels a lot better. And the age for that price feels pretty good as well. It's a bit of a risk. You know, he had that one hugely successful season last year. Who knows what he would do, going into a new system. But it just feels like a good fit to keep that party going. All right. Outside of that, there's also some really good names. If the Chargers need to go a little bit cheaper, Christian Wilkins is a fantastic option over the middle or in the middle. Leonard Williams, a fantastic option. Big guy in the middle of that line. DJ Reader, also a very proven guy in there. Sheldon Rankins is okay. Tier Tart's okay. Fletcher Cox, I mean, come on. 1 year for $10 million. I will take that every frigging day of the week. Daquan Jones. There are some fan-friggin-tastic talent all over the defensive line of free agency this season. I need the Chargers to get a slice of it. It's a hugely important position to Jesse Minter's defense, but also the Chargers have had a huge weakness there for very many years. This is the season I want them to go all out for defensive line and running back. Okay, and I really feel like the options are too rich for both of these positions in free agency not to take a bite somewhere. You could convince me that, hey, maybe at running back we go a bit cheaper, right? Let's say at running back, the Chargers decide to go Gus Edwards or J.K. Dobbins, right? And they draft their guy to complement him. If that's the case, I'm fine with that so long as we take a big swing at defensive line, man. I think that's a big deal. Give me Madubuike, dude. And, Gus Edwards, that's fine. Totally fine by me. All right? So those are the two biggest positions I want to take swings at. The final couple of positions here, actually the final position here is going to be edge defender. This is actually going to be a pretty big need if we decide to trade away Joey Bosa. Of course, I do think that Khalil Mack could be on the move as well. If you trade both of them, there's a huge need all of a sudden that needs to play opposite Tuli Tuipulotu. And you could convince me that the Chargers make that move because they just want to get younger. There are guys, again, this free agent class is kind of stacked with some talent where the Chargers would need to add after, creating a lot of money. You could get Josh Allen for cheaper than Joey Bosa. Much cheaper than Joey Bosa if you decide to make that trade. This is why a lot of people are saying trade Bosa, because that money you freed up goes towards a younger player that's a bit more proven. I'm about it. I get it. Okay, I'm about it. You can get Josh Allen completely fine. Brian Burns, $24 million. He's coming off a pretty good season where he's been climbing. I'm about it. Okay, I think Josh Allen's going to be on top of everybody's list, but definitely not a bad idea here. Then you got some more veteran options. Danielle Hunter, Bryce Huff, Chase Young. I mean, these guys a bit younger right here. Definitely not a bad idea. I would love Chase Young on the Chargers to replace if we decide to go past like a Joey Bosa or something. There's some great options. Fortunately, though, there are some nice veteran options that are a bit cheaper that I think the Chargers need to take advantage of, especially because of their history. Okay, their playing history. Jadeveon Clowney, fresh off a nice season with the Baltimore Ravens, knows the system, under $10 million. Gimme. Zadarius Smith, ex-Baltimore Raven, coming off a nice season, going into a similar system with the Chargers. Gimme, right? And they're both older, but who cares? These are temporary options while we look for a guy, right? Josh Uche, definitely not a bad flyer option. There's another guy down here that I was especially excited to talk about. Maybe he didn't make this list on PFF. Kyle Van Noy. Bring back Kyle Van Noy. He's a bit older, only $3 million. Just got off an awesome season with the Baltimore Ravens. Gimme, right? This is a particularly important free agency because, of course, there's a lot of great talent at all these positions. I think the three biggest ones that I want to throw attention at are running back, defensive line, and linebacker or edge. All of these guys have great quality options at the top of the list, but awesome options in terms of scheme familiarity, right? The Baltimore Ravens defense that we're trying to build has a lot of free agents that are going to be available this season. The Chargers need to get a slice of it. And it doesn't have to be the cream of the crop, right? I would love Josh Allen, but would I be happy with Jadeveon Clowney or Zadarius Smith playing for a couple of seasons to kind of get their feet wet, help the Chargers get their feet wet in this new system? Absolutely, I'd be fine with that. If it means that we get a Chris Jones or a Madubuike or whatever, right? Lots of talent all over free agency. So you guys let me know. You guys let me know some of the players that you were highlighted. Again, I think if I were to choose, let's go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and do it real quick. I was like, this video is getting a little long, but I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to give you guys the guys that I would take at those three positions. If I were the Chargers and I had so much money to spend, right? Let's say that we had like $45 million to spend. I think I'm signing Derrick Henry. It would probably be closer to about $8 million, $7 million. But I think I signed Derrick Henry to give us that big pivot that we needed towards a power run game. I think on defensive line, give me Madubuike. I don't know if he's near the top here. Give me Madubuike. $23 million, a lot of money. But again, he just changed this. These two players change the offense and the defense alone. It changes the physicality. Just that one signing puts you in that dimension, right? And then finally at edge, give me somebody like, give me Zadarius Smith, right? Let's go over here to edge. Give me Zadarius. How much would he be? $12 million. Maybe that is a little high. I was actually thinking that at that price point, maybe give me like a Chase Young or something. I don't know. Or somebody even from again, I can't get past the thought of bringing back Kyle Van Noy either. That would be such a great discount too. So it's just, there's a lot there. There's a lot there to unpack. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. A lot of good value, but in the end, I think this video more speaks towards the necessity in my mind to go out there and make some moves. Yeah, I think it's gonna happen. The Chargers are going to be players. The question is, how big of players are they going to be at certain positions? I think at running back, interior defensive line, and edge, these are all positions that you need to attack aggressively. Go out there and get those Ravens that are proven and good to build that system that you need in Los Angeles. You're going to have connections. You're going to have interest. There's a lot to be excited about there, man. So just get excited about free agency. We're going to continue building it. This is more of an on-the-cuff experimental video. I'll have a more compressed and comprised list of players that I'm prioritizing here in the next week. Before the new league gets kicked off, we're going to do another free agency video that has what I would do on team building. All right? Should be pretty interesting. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you liked what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up, stay frosty.